Throughout history, both philosophers and psychologists have grappled with this idea, that humans, despite their intelligence, frequently act against their own well-being. This phenomenon is often referred to as self-destruction, and it shows up in all areas of life. Self-destruction isn't always dramatic or catastrophic. Sometimes, it's as small as doubting your abilities or postponing important tasks. Other times, it's more pronounced, like engaging in unhealthy habits or distancing yourself from people who care. But the essence is the same, an act that stands in the way of your own happiness. The question is, why? Why do we destroy what we try so hard to build? Self-destruction takes many forms. One of the most common is procrastination. We know we have a task to complete, something that will benefit us, but we keep putting it off. Instead, we choose distraction, often accompanied by a sense of guilt and frustration. Then there's the relentless voice of negative self-talk. It whispers that we're not good enough, that we don't deserve success, or that we'll fail before we even begin. This inner critic, unchecked, can drive us to self-sabotage, convincing us that it's better not to try at all than to risk failing. But these behaviors are only the surface. They are symptoms of something deeper, a web of psychological and emotional forces that lead us to these destructive choices. To understand why we engage in self-destructive behavior, we need to turn to both psychology and philosophy. Let's start with the existential philosophers, particularly Jean-Paul Sartre and Friedrich Nietzsche. Sartre famously wrote, "Man is condemned to be free," meaning that we are burdened by the responsibility of creating our own lives. This freedom, though liberating, can be terrifying. When faced with the infinite possibilities of life, we often feel paralyzed. The fear of making the wrong choice can drive us to do nothing at all, or worse, to sabotage the very choices that might set us free. This is where procrastination and avoidance come into play. But it goes deeper. Nietzsche proposed that humans have a self-destructive element tied to what he called the will to power. In trying to achieve power or mastery over our lives, we sometimes encounter obstacles, our own limitations, societal pressures, that create internal conflict. When we can't overcome these, self-destruction can appear as a way to cope with the frustration of unfulfilled desires. In psychology, we find another answer: cognitive dissonance. This is the mental discomfort we experience when our actions conflict with our beliefs or values. For instance, if we don't truly believe we deserve success, we might unconsciously sabotage ourselves to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of inconsistency. It's the mind's way of maintaining balance, even if it harms us in the process. Sigmund Freud also explored this in his theory of the death drive, a subconscious urge toward self-destruction. According to Freud, humans are not only driven by the will to live and thrive, what he called the life instinct, but also by an opposing force that seeks to dismantle, disrupt, or undo. This conflict can manifest as self-sabotaging behaviors that, on the surface, seem irrational, but make sense when we look deeper. So, why do we destroy ourselves? It may come down to fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, and sometimes even the fear of success. Success, after all, comes with expectations. When we succeed, we risk disappointing others and ourselves in the future. This pressure can be overwhelming, leading us to sabotage our progress before it even starts. And then there's the deeper, more hidden fear, the fear of confronting who we truly are. It's easier to stay in the familiar discomfort of self-sabotage than to face the possibility that we are capable of more happiness, more success, more authenticity. As Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Often, we are not afraid of failure itself, but of the vulnerability that success and self-acceptance demand. In this sense, self-destruction is not about a desire to fail, but about avoiding the profound inner work of accepting our potential. But it's not just fear of success that holds us back, it's also the deep-seated belief that we're unworthy of it. Many of us carry old wounds, perhaps from childhood or past experiences, where we were told we weren't good enough. These messages get internalized, becoming the basis of negative self-beliefs. As a result, we unconsciously self-sabotage to avoid confronting a future that contradicts our internal narrative. Carl Jung recognized this, noting that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In other words, many of our self-destructive behaviors stem from unconscious fears and unresolved conflicts. If we don't become aware of these forces, they'll continue to control us, leading us to self-sabotage even when we consciously want to succeed. And let's not forget the role of identity. When we've been stuck in patterns of self-doubt or failure for a long time, these behaviors become part of how we see ourselves. We become comfortable with the discomfort of failure because it feels familiar. Success, on the other hand, requires us to redefine who we are, and that can be terrifying. If we've always been the person who falls short, suddenly being the person who succeeds can feel foreign and unsafe. It's as if part of us clings to the old identity, resisting change at all costs. The key insight here is that self-destruction is often a coping mechanism, a way of avoiding fear, responsibility, and the unknown. It may feel safer in the short term, but in reality, it keeps us stuck. To break free, we need to confront the fears and doubts that fuel these behaviors, and most importantly, we need to believe that we are worthy of the happiness and success we seek. As philosopher Soren Kierkegaard observed, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. With every step toward success, we are confronted with endless possibilities, but also the weight of choice. The fear of choosing wrong, or of stepping into a reality we're not sure we can handle, can push us into self-destruction. Sometimes it's easier to stay in the comfort of the familiar, even if that familiar space is limiting or painful. But understanding is the key. Awareness of these tendencies allows us to break the cycle. When we acknowledge the fears and contradictions driving our behavior, we can begin to make conscious, deliberate choices that move us away from destruction and toward growth. As Friedrich Nietzsche put it, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Finding that why, understanding our deeper motivations, empowers us to choose a different path, one that leads not to destruction, but to fulfillment. Have you ever noticed self-destructive patterns in your own life? What insights have you gained from facing them? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about how we can collectively move past these tendencies. And if you're ready to dive deeper into personal growth, check out our other videos where we explore the keys to living a more fulfilled and authentic life.